Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into tonight's second half, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Today's first encounter, Panola County, Texas. I worked as a truck driver. I hauled crude oil and condensate off of oil leases to unload stations. I would start work at about dark and finish up right before daylight, or sometimes a little earlier. I did this in Gregg, Rusk, Panola, Smith, and the surrounding counties. I don't remember the roads because we hauled so many different leases that my memory fails me. In the wee hours of a cool, foggy morning in December, I had loaded and was on my way out to the lease. We were required to open and shut the gate on these leases because of livestock and public safety. Our trailers had bright lights for seeing how to back up at night, and I always turned them on when I was closing the gates. Just as I closed and locked the gate, I saw something step out of the woods and out onto the lease road. It paused a minute and continued on across the lease road. My blood ran cold and every hair on my body stood on end. It was only about 30 feet from me. I could see its breath in the cold night air. If these things exist, that's what I saw. It didn't seem menacing. I ran for my truck and drove off and never looked back. I've never told this to anyone, not even my wife. Today's second encounter. Murray, Oklahoma. It was Halloween night, 1996. I was taking my brother to the lake so he and his friends could sit and see if the story of the Lady of the Lake was true. I dropped him off and started back toward the house. As I crossed Low Water Bridge, I looked to the west down the creek, and on the north bank I saw it. At first I wrote it off as a Halloween prank. There is no way I just saw a Bigfoot, especially not in Oklahoma. So I turned the car around and came back to the bridge. I parked the car sideways across the bridge where my headlights were shining down on the creek. The creature was squatted on the balls of his feet with his hands in the water, possibly washing something or trying to catch fish or maybe just to get a drink. As I sat there amazed, the creature stood up to at least 7.5 feet tall. It never even looked at me. It simply walked across the creek, up the south bank, and into the trees. There's a nursing home less than the length of a city block from this location. I kept this a secret for many years, telling only my wife. The animal was approximately 7.5 feet tall, very broad in the shoulders and narrow in the hips. I would guess it weighed in at 500 to 600 pounds. It was dark-colored, probably dark brown or black. I couldn't tell due to the lighting. It was covered in long hair, long on the head, shorter as it went down. Since I only saw it from a profile angle, I couldn't tell much about its facial features. The head had a long crest, similar to a gorilla. The creature walked upright on two legs the entire time. I didn't try to find any evidence of the creature's presence at the time, just Seeing it was proof enough for me. Today's third encounter, Vernon Parish, Louisiana. I just finished surveying some timber to be cut and was driving back to file the survey when I saw several large footprints on the side of the road. Stopping to look, I found over 20 some odd tracks that went into the woods on one side of the road, then crossing the road into the woods. I also noticed a lot of deer hair, no blood. All the deer tracks were in and around the tracks I found. The tracks had 5 toes on each foot. They went approximately a half to 1 inch into the gravel and sand along the road. I left and went home to get a camera. I returned with a Polaroid camera and took 5 pictures because I used the rest earlier that month. The tracks were larger than my foot, 12-inch boot. I also weighed 220 pounds and could not even get my boot to sink as deep as these tracks were. Today's fourth encounter, Walker County, Texas. 2 winters ago, around 9:30, I was coming back from dropping off a person I was dating at the time. The conditions were sleet and ice, and I shouldn't have even been driving. But there were news reports that we would be iced in within mere hours. I didn't want to be trapped with this person at my home, so I ventured forth in the night. He lived approximately 13 miles away. To make a long story short, on my way back to my subdivision, which is very rural, I came around a curve in the road. I was moving quite slowly because of the horrible weather conditions. When I slowed down even more because I saw a large ball of hair about the size of a large deer on the side of the road. I had my brights on this animal when it stood up, took 2 steps, went over onto its knuckles and lunged into the woods. I screamed to my son, "Did you see that?" But he was sitting slouched down into the seat. I went to the house to get my father his shotgun and his large truck. I made him drive back to where I had seen it. I will say animal. We drove all the way around the lake and around the entire subdivision in the sleet and ice because I just knew that he would see it too, and I would have another witness. No animal, no witness, just me. I was in tears. I was being told I'm stupid, and all I saw was a deer or something. We were iced in for 3 days. I went back with someone else after the ice melted. There was 1 single print. I saw it. I touched it. I placed my own foot in it. Then I smashed the print underneath my own. Today's 5th encounter. San Jacinto, Texas. One evening, a friend and I were riding an ATV through Sam Houston National Forest while riding down a straight and rather wide trail, approximately 20 yards wide. I turned around to say something to my friend who was riding as passenger. Whenever I turned back around, there was a large humanoid creature, approximately 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered and thick in appearance, with either dark brown or black hair covering its entire body. It spooked me, and I yelled at the passenger to look. When I yelled, the creature turned and ran into the woods. The creature made a quick turn, upright, and ran upright. This marks out the possibility of it being a bear. My friend did not see it and asked what I was yelling about. I couldn't speak from awe. The creature was only approximately 50 yards in front of us in a wide open. I sped up the ATV to the location where the creature ran into the woodline. The limbs and brush were shaking back and forth, but I didn't see it again due to the thick underbrush of East Texas. It scared me first, so I downshifted the ATV as fast as possible and sped away, stopping several hundred yards down the trail to explain to my friend what I had just seen. It was an experience I will never forget, and who knows, maybe it was meant just for me to see. I've told many people this story, and most of them just laugh, but I know what I saw. I'm an avid hunter, but not a redneck. I respect all wildlife, and have a lot of experience in the field of wildlife. There is nothing else it could have been. Like I said before, I had a clear 50-yard sighting of the creature. Today's sixth encounter, Earth, Texas. I was on my way to Gatesville, traveling south on US 281, south to Stephenville, when I topped a hill and noticed something at the edge of my high beams crossing the road. It appeared to be a large man, possibly a hitchhiker, but as I got closer, it turned towards my truck, continued to walk in the bar ditch. This thing was approximately 8 feet tall, covered in long hair. It appeared to have long, hippie-like hair and somewhat of a beard. From what I could see of this thing, it was very big, as all I could see was from the thigh up, and it still towered over the top of my truck. As I got closer, the one thing that really got my attention was its eyes. They appeared a yellowish green, and only slightly shined. The nose wasn't like a pig's nose, but more human, with flared nostrils, and the face seemed very human-like in expression. It had a very large upper body and chest. It appeared to have no neck, as the trapeze muscles continued up to its head. As I passed, I checked my rear view, and I could see it turn into the brush. I checked my brakes and started to turn around, but then I thought, what am I doing? Thinking my eyes and the early hour of the morning were playing tricks on me, I continued to Gatesville. The rest of the way to Gatesville, I kept trying to figure out what I had just seen. Was it a man, a hitchhiker, transient, or some sort of animal? Maybe a monster. I tried to put it out of my mind, but I couldn't quite let it go. I told my wife only after 3 or 4 years had passed, and I got that look, so I never told anyone else until I heard other people sharing their experiences. Today's seventh encounter, Delta County, Texas. I was born in 1936 and grew up on a farm in Delta County. While working in the field, we would see what we referred to as the nude woman. It was a large animal walking upright along the edge of the woods and never coming completely out in the opening. I left in 1954 to serve my country for 23 years and returning to the same area I grew up in. Sometime in the mid-'80s, after a heavy rain with flooding, my baby brother found footsteps where this animal had departed the water and walked around in the mud. In the early 90s, my mom and dad were traveling down Texas 71 in Delta County, and just before crossing the South Sulphur River, saw a large man-like animal cross the road in front of them, and stepped across a fence and headed north. Again in the 90s, my son-in-law and myself had a couple of encounters with a large animal walking through the trees in waist-deep water while we were duck hunting in now what is Cooper Lake. Around 95, while checking my cattle at about 10 p.m., I encountered a rather large man-like creature, looked to be about 8 feet tall in my light, and it went one way while I went the other. One never hears of this animal any longer, and the only wild animals you see now are wild boar and black panthers. Today's eighth encounter, Titus County, Texas. A mother, father, and son had a particularly close encounter. The son had the visual. The family was sitting at a kitchen table when all 5 dogs began to bark as if extremely alarmed. The son went outside to investigate with a flashlight and a 12-gauge. The dogs were on the west side of the house, facing west towards the garden patch. The garden patch was not being cultivated at the time and was overgrown with tall grass and weed. The plum tree was approximately 50 yards from the house at the northwest corner of the garden facing the fence. The son approached the plum tree, stopped, and began to scan the area with the flashlight 180 degrees from left to right. The son glimpsed a large, dog-like figure beside the tree and quickly shined a beam of light on the figure as in a double take. The figure turned around quickly, appeared to look at the sun briefly, then turned and ran. It was large, between 8 to 9 feet tall, dark-colored, hair all over its body. Today's 9th encounter, Bowie County, Texas. My coon hound started barking in the barn where I had each hound in separate horse stalls. My one coon dog never barked while on his chain or in the pen, only while he's hunting. That's what got my attention when he started barking. The barn is about 30 yards behind my house. Me and a friend of mine both looked at each other when the barking started. Hounds, as you may know, have a different kind of bark when they smell something that spooks them. We call this the booger barking. I've encountered this one time before down in the Red River bottoms where I coon hunt. Anyway, we got up and looked out the back porch window. Chris's little cow dog was looking and barking at the small barn just north of the big barn where the hounds were. We looked toward where she was barking, and there is where we saw an upright creature, black in color, standing behind the little barn, as if hiding from the hounds. The creature was slightly hunched over, but we judged it to be at least 7 feet tall. We grabbed my coon light, which had a spotlight, and shined it on the creature. It turned around and glanced at us. I will never forget those eyes. They were copper-clad, almost golden color. The creature then retreated back off toward the thin strip of woods behind the barn. We grabbed a shotgun and, without thinking, went out to that little barn. There were several trampled down places where it was standing, and the bush near the barn where the creature was standing behind had broken leaves on the ground. No hair, no footprints. We should have immediately sealed off this area and searched real good for hair, but we didn't. I think this is a problem when Bigfoot is sighted. People are so excited like we were. They don't think clearly for just finding evidence. People want to get another sighting or spot it again. I believe I have also ran into this same creature or something similar before while coon hunting the Red River bottoms, but never got a visual sight of it. We just smelled it and was tracked out by the animal as we were coon hunting. There have been many sightings in the Red River bottoms around Hooks. Thank you. Today's 10th encounter, Baxter County, Arkansas. While driving to check on my dogs that were being kept at my aunt's house in a fenced-in area with a 10-by-10 outbuilding, an adolescent Bigfoot ran out of the woods and into my aunt's yard. It ran between the house and the garage. It was approximately 3.5 to 4 feet tall. I pulled into the drive, but was too afraid to get out of the car. I had the feeling that something was watching me from the woods. The dogs were yapping, but okay. So I left because I was afraid. Today's 11th encounter, Vernon Parish, Louisiana. I was in the Army, stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and was heading home. I had crossed the Sabine River Bridge from Texas and entered Louisiana on Louisiana 8, headed east towards Leesville. Approximately 3 miles into Louisiana, where the road entered a long, shallow curve to the north, there was a creature kneeling on the shoulder of the road. It was a heavily built, two-legged animal with a round or slightly elongated head and eyes that shined or glowed amber in my headlights. I saw it move its head and look at me or my car. If I had to estimate the height, it was 6 to 6.5 feet tall, standing straight up. I never mentioned this incident to anyone until last year. My son and I were watching a Bigfoot program on TV. Today's 12th encounter, McCurtain County, Oklahoma. I went squirrel hunting a half a mile into the woods. I thought all morning that I could feel something watching me. I began to hear the sounds of something big and strong on the move, something just out of sight. The sound of breaking limbs and shaking trees. Through a gap in the leafy cover near the ground, I saw the hairy, reddish-brown legs of an animal that appeared to be walking upright. I got the hell out of there and haven't been back since. I've got a reputation for being a good hunter. For a long time, I didn't tell anybody. And when I did tell people, everybody made fun of me. So I haven't said too much about this to too many other people. A lot of coon hunters have been talking. Today's 13th encounter, Rapids Parish, Louisiana. My friend and I had driven down a small path toward the Red River. Normally this trail is only used for three-wheelers and motorcycles. I had a small truck and wanted to see if it would make it. We were standing at the top of a bank in a moderately wooded area. I looked back away from the river, and at the bottom of the hill, near a small creek that we had just driven across, I saw a dark, heavy-set figure standing near the trees less than 100 yards away. I told my friend to look back, and just as he did, the creature ran across the path and went off the trail. We stood there for about 2 minutes, trying to decide what it was. Then we heard something moving through the brush a lot closer. We could see movement coming towards us. We ran to the truck, which was between us, and I don't know what that thing was. When I started the truck and looked behind me for a way out, it was standing less than 50 feet from my tailgate. I turned the truck around and going forward into some brush. When I had the truck pointed in the right direction away from the river, the creature wasn't in sight. I floored the gas and hit the creek, getting stuck in the process. My friend made me get out to try to push the truck out of the creek. I was so scared that I never looked back to see if it was after me. So that sighting cost me $1,800 in repairs to my truck. I'm still not sure if these things are dangerous, but I don't want to be around to find out. What I saw was very fast. I couldn't tell you how tall the thing was. I'm 6'4", and I'm pretty sure it was a lot taller than me. I've never seen a person that weighed as much as this creature look like it weighed. It seemed to have thick, long black hair. It was a lot bigger than any black bear. There are many strange sightings in this area. People in Louisiana don't like to have conversations about things they don't understand, so not many people talk about their sightings. Maybe they don't talk much about them because they're so common. Today's 14th encounter, Palo Pinto, Texas. I was going trout fishing with a friend below the spillway at Possum Kingdom Lake, and we had taken Highway 4 north. It was fairly dark, but visibility was good. As we approached the bridge over the Brazo River, something was kneeling on the side by some roadkill. When the headlights shone on the scene, a tall, hairy thing stood erect and ran across the road down the steep bank toward the river. I got out of the truck to try to get a better look, but it was too dark to see anything. This thing was quite tall and covered in long, dark hair all over its body. It moved rapidly with agility in the dark right in front of us. This was definitely not a bear. Today's 15th encounter, Cherokee County, Oklahoma. Various newspaper articles report possible Bigfoot near Cherokee, Oklahoma. First report was August 1st, 1990, at a mobile home near Eldon, Oklahoma, at the junction of Highway 62 and 51. A woman living in a mobile home reported to Cherokee County Sheriff Department that she heard noises and noticed a bad smell. She then allegedly observed a creature approximately 10 feet tall and about 400 pounds. Deputy Joe Weevil investigated the reports and found impressions big enough to place both his feet in. 2 days later, an 8-year-old girl and her mother described a similar creature going through a trash pile near their house. Their dog chased it, but it returned with its tail between its legs. The creature was described as 8 feet tall with dark brown, fuzzy hair, similar to a bear, except it was described to be walking upright. Oklahoma Wildlife Department District Chief Joe Alder said he had received several calls regarding the animal and believed it to be a bear. He said he had nothing to base it on, and that it was unusual for a bear to be walking on its hind legs for very long. Similar reports from this area in the 70s also. All right, folks, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. Your support is what makes this channel so special and what keeps it growing and going. It's truly appreciated. Guys, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on your children, your pets, your family, and friends. We know these creatures are out there, and we know they are real. Share a little bit of information with those folks that you care about, that we share with each other on a daily basis. It may just save their life someday. God bless you all.